Hey everyone, welcome back. It's great to see you again. Let's get started with episode 3. First, I'm going to clean up main.dart. I'll remove the default My Home page that Flutter generates. Then, I'll keep the material app, but I'll set its home to a simple wrapper widget that we create ourselves. I'll call this widget AppShell because it clearly represents the root shell of the application. Now let's create this widget. Because this widget isn't tied to a single feature, I'll put it in widget folder of code. Scaffold first, a text in a center widget as the body. Later, we'll slot in our feature screens here. Let's import our widget in main.dart. Now let's run the app to see the result. And this is our app. To remove the debug banner, simply set debug show check mode banner to false. Now let's use our config folder. I'm going to create a new file called apptem.dart inside it. This file will hold all the theme settings for our app. The reason we keep it here is because theme belongs to the whole application. It's not just related to a single feature. Let's write the code together. I create a class and call it apptem. I define a static getter called lightem. Now let's return our theme data widget. Blue has the main color, white as the background, and a styled app bar. Background be blue, text colors be white, font size 20, and icons color be also white. Let's also add a dark theme. I just copy the light theme and change its name to dark theme. Now let's just change the colors. I also set the brightness to brightness.dark. Let's do the same for the light theme. Now we want to apply our theme to our material. Set theme to apptem.light. and set dark term to appterm.dark. Now let's go to AppShell and add the app bar. I restart the app to see the result. That's it. Now let's switch between themes. Now I set theme mode to theme mode.system. This way, the app's theme adjusts according to the user's device theme. Let's change the device theme to dark. As you can see, the app's theme has switched to dark. Alright, I think this is enough for now. Let's switch gears and talk about the API we'll be using in this app. Head over to GNews.io. With a quick sign up and a simple email verification, you'll get access to your dashboard. Right on the front page of the dashboard, you can find your personal API key. Now we're going to use the top headlines endpoint. If you click on this option, you can actually preview the API response right here on the website. You'll see each article comes with different fields like ID, title, content, URL, image, and more. Notice that the content field is truncated. It doesn't give us the full article. To access the full content, you'd need a paid account. But since this video is only for learning purposes, the free version is more than enough. Next, let's check out the documentation. Go to top headline endpoint. Here you can see the API URL for fetching news, along with all the available query parameters. For example, you can filter by category. The default is general. Set the language. Specify the country. Limit the maximum number of articles. And a bunch of other options. Okay, now let's jump back to our Flutter project and actually connect this API. Alright, now let's create a helper file for constants inside core, inside utils. This is where we'll keep values that we need throughout the app, like the GNews base URL and our API key. The base URL comes directly from the official GNews documents. When we make requests later, we only need to append the endpoint like /search or /top headlines instead of writing the full URL every time. Const here means the value is fixed and compile time and never changes. Static means I don't need to create an object of constants to access it. I can just write constants.api key or constants.base URL anywhere in the app. Okay, now let's add API key in the same way, which is your unique key you get from the GNews dashboard. Now let's using our API. To call our APIs and make requests, we need to add do package. I open terminal and write flutter pub add do. Now let's check our pubspec.yaml to make sure that do is added. Okay, we can see do package added here. Now we want to make an API client. To do this, I go to News Feature, Data Layer, and inside Data Source, we have two folders, Local and Remote. I delete the local subfolder for this feature since we're not using offline DB yet. I add the API client called News API client to Remote folder. In clean architecture, the data layer gets raw data, no app logic, just fetching and returning. The responsibility of our data source is very simple. It only fetches the raw data, whether from an offline source like a local database or from an online source like an API. The data source should not transform or process the data in any way. Its only job is to deliver that raw data to the model, which will handle converting it into Flutter objects. We'll talk more about how the model works in the next parts. Now I create a class called News API Client. Its responsibility is simple. Talk to the API and return the raw JSON data. Clean architecture tells us that the data source should never transform or filter the data. That's the job of our models later. Inside, I set up you as our HTTP client. Then I'll grab the API key from constants so it's available in every request. Now let's create a method called fetch news by category. It takes a category like world or technology. We call the top headlines endpoint and pass in our query parameters. Category, the category of news we want. Maximum to control how many articles we get back. Language, here I set it to English. And our API key for authentication. Notice, in a real project, you should never expose your API key directly inside the mobile app. Instead, your app should send requests to your own backend server, and that server will talk to the API using the API key. This way, the key is hidden and safe. But because it's for learning purposes, I'll keep it inside the client so we can move forward faster. Once we get the response, I'll print the data so we can see it in the console. This is just for debugging. We'll remove it later. This error is because we should wait for the response. So I add a wait here and make our method async. Finally, I'll return the raw response data. Now let's add our return type here. Okay, that's enough. So to summarize, the data source is responsible only for fetching and returning raw data. It doesn't change or restructure anything. Later, in our model, we'll take this JSON and convert it into Dart objects our app can actually work with. Before we wrap up this part, let me share a quick tip. When naming things, pay attention to how you write them. File names should be in snake case. Class names should follow Pascal case. Variables and methods should use camel case. That's it for this part. If you found it helpful, please give it a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. Thanks for watching. See you soon.